As we approach the end of the year, it's time to recollect, look back, reminisce on the year that was, and look forward to the year that's coming. Craig is with me today, as always, and we have our friend and manager of industry analysis at AutoPacific, Mr. Paul Waatti. That's two A's, two T's, one I. I almost always have to double check to make sure I got it right.
So does everybody else.
So does everybody else. And Paul, your job is to have your fingers on the pulse of, but not the EV pulse, because that'd be a trademark violation, and we'd see you. Of the industry. So
yes.
I wanted to talk to you today about everything that sort of happened in 2023. I mean, like in a real condensed way, of course. Because a lot of things have happened. At the beginning of the year, it felt like we were heading in a very specific way with EV production and EV sales and stuff like that. And now, as we're most of the way through December, it feels different. So,
right.
Like, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big year. Coming into 23, we were still getting out of the chip shortage and supply chain issues. And, we're still not fully out of that. There's some automakers that are, doing better at this point than others. I think a big thing is going to be preparing to not let that happen in the issue or later. I think we saw, huge EV sales this year. I think November marked the first 12 consecutive months where we sold over 1 million EVs.
Wow.
And
big numbers.
Yeah, that's a lot of cars.
Yeah, exactly. We have the first Vietnamese automaker entered the market this year.
We did.
Cybertruck actually delivered.
Oh, they've delivered a few of them. Holy crap. I think that's the biggest shock.
When is the Roadster coming out? It's only been like 6 years, right?
Right. And then we're starting to see some slowing. And I don't really think that that's anything to be concerned about for, the EV market. Obviously, we're still seeing market share go up. We're still seeing sales increase year over year. But nothing's going to be just a straight line up. And I think what we saw was most of the early adopters that were really wanting to get into EVs, they've mostly been satisfied at this point. And now we're starting to see what the natural demand of the mainstream market is. And to be frank, there's not that many mainstream models that people can afford yet. So,
right.
So what's out there is very expensive. There's still some great quality EVs, and we're still going to continue to see sales, but it's probably going to be a slower pace for a little while. I think production has obviously been sort of a hiccup for some automakers more than others. GM's Ultium is off to a very slow start. Next year is a big year for GM.
Understatement of the year.
Well, yeah. Let's be cordial on this call.
Well, so I want to kind of build off of that a tiny bit. I drove the Blazer EV last week. Yeah. In
I did too. It was good.
In Vargo, yeah, I thought it was good. Our infotainment system was a little bit buggy, and obviously I don't agree with the decision to kill Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support. But I was able to ask Scott when we were there, Paul, about what did you guys learn? Because, I mean, obviously they're having problems scaling up Ultium to a reasonable level. But in addition to that, like, what have they learned with Hummer and with Lyric that they've now sort of applied to their future rollouts? And one of those things that he said was, he's like, well, we're going to manage expectations by limiting or eliminating entirely reservations. So many people put their money down on like Lyric that when there's money exchanged, then there should be an expectation, but that expectation becomes sooner on like how quickly I can get a car. So and they're not doing reservations at all on Equinox when that ships next year. So
yeah,
the only person that I know of that can take a customer's money and not deliver a product for years and years and years is named Elon Musk, and I
Right.
think everybody else. I thought that was a wise realization that sure he's not going to admit, oh, this process has been, he's not going to go into specifics on why manufacturing has been an issue, but I do think there's a lot to say about the self-awareness of, oh, reservations, that might be something that some people can do and get away with, but other automakers cannot do
A
that.
reservation is not a difficult thing. Don't sell the car unless you can build it. Very
Right.
simple.
Right. But in pandemic, and then sort of shortly after, Elon was the one who mastered the give us $100 and you get your spot in line. There's like 2 million reservations for Cybertruck. There's no way they're gonna sell all of those. But then there's also people that have reservations on like Silverado EV and on Lightning, and on
they had
and
hundreds
on
of thousands for Lightning, if memory
Yeah.
serves.
and then those people had reservations on 4 or 5 different vehicles, and whichever one got delivered first was the one they were going to buy, and then they were going to cancel their other reservations. So it creates this artificial demand that I don't think was there. But a million cars a month is not an insignificant amount, despite what certain conservative media outlets would say about that EVs are doomed. So so it sounds like you still think like the EV market is reasonably healthy. Maybe not growing as quickly as everybody kind of expected, but it would be fair to say that you still think there's solid health in the segment.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think a big part of that is what EVs are being offered right now. I think we're kind of hitting maybe an EV pickup bubble, where do you think the market can support as many EV trucks as we have coming? And some are on sale already, but Ram's going to enter the mix. Is there really enough demand to carry those long term? Our data show that there's not really that many EV pickup intenders. It's still, that's owned by ICE and diesel at this point still, and we're going to see that for quite some time. We always talk about, the transition isn't going to happen overnight, and a lot of automakers led us to believe that it'd be like in the next couple of years or by the end of the decade, but in reality, it's still going to be. It's not like you're going to snap your fingers and it's going to change and all the gas stations are all of a sudden going to be, charging stations. This is going to be a decade's transition, not years. So there's really, what comes back to the mainstream aspect of it, the consumers really they really want a $35,000 or less EV, and there's not much on the market. And like you just said, Bolt's going to be dead, at least for a short period. And then you have Leaf, and then that's going to be changing over to a crossover style in a couple of years. The Volvo EX30 is coming. That was one that really caught a lot of people by surprise, that they could get that price as low as they did. But we need more of those volumes to actually see, incremental, more than just incremental growth. And it'll be exponential growth once we start to see some of those models come into play.
It's funny too, because I'm not surprised that interest in electric trucks is low, as you just said, Paul. But the funny thing is, I think probably like 75% of full-size truck buyers would be better served by an electric truck than a combustion-powered one, because most of these people are not using them at the job site. They're not towing massive loads. They're taking the kids to school, or maybe dragging a fishing boat or a couple snowmobiles a few times a year. These sorts of folks, or urban cowboys, I think would be much better served by an electric truck. Be much more efficient and affordable to operate.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think as a society, we haven't hit that point yet where,
well,
you're not going to get rid of my diesel.
Well, you mentioned the X30. We recently, Paul, you and I talked about with Forvia about some stuff that's a little future looking. So let's use this point to kind of pivot into what's coming in 2024. And when it comes to affordability, there may be I don't want to say a slew of new options, but there's definitely stuff coming. I mean, EX30, I think has the potential to be a very successful product.
Absolutely.
At 35 grand to start.
May not win
that
car of the year, but
yeah, it's not going to win
Well, at
this
least not
year's
this
Mazda.
year. But
yeah,
No.
right.
Um,
Unfortunately for them.
but if you don't need the range, the Fiat 500e will be on sale. Which the last 500e is a California only special, was a really fun car to drive. I feel like there's maybe, as long as it retains that. There is the front wheel drive Blazer, which will be a little bit less money. There is, the Leaf's gonna carry on. The Mini is refreshed, which is another, as long as you don't need all of the range, an excellent little car to drive around.
right.
And then, of course, the Equinox EV,
Yep.
which is,
Promising. We'll see if
very,
what
very.
was the price? 30,000 or 40,000?
Well, they were initially saying it was going to be 30, but
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, like the launch models are in the low 40s, I believe. They're saying the base model, which I think comes in 25, will be 35, right around there. So they're not that far off from what they had said. They said around 30,000.
Yeah. Well,
I still think we're still early in the technology curve here. So everything is very expensive. Automakers are losing on every single model they sell. So for EVs to be a premium option at this point, it isn't that surprising. And I think, as we start to see more models come into play, GM has like plenty of EVs coming next year. Buick has one, so they're going to start to hit scale. And when they hit scale, they're going to be closer to profitability. And then they can start to lower their prices when consumers are really gaining traction in the market.
kind of EV. I drove a prototype earlier in the year. Excellent. I think it's going to be a compelling vehicle as well. Wish it had more of the eGMP hardware, charging hardware, so it would charge a little quicker, but that cost dinero. Mark doesn't understand why we're mad at the Bolts leaving. I think that's, for me, and Craig, I'll have you answer, and then Paul, I'd love your kind of input on this. I think it's the Bolt leaving is frustrating because it's affordable. And I think that with the challenges that GM is having right now with Ultium, and the fact that the new Bolt has to be built on Ultium, there's they don't have a choice. I'm worried that it won't retain that affordability. And then if it becomes a $40,000 car to start with, the plot is lost because there's better things out there, I feel like, at that price point or a little bit higher. What makes the Bolt such a compelling product right now is it's a blazing deal, Craig, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the Bolt, if memory serves, is the most affordable EV out there today. Is it the best thing on four wheels? Absolutely not. But it's still a good car and very affordable, which is not the case for other EVs, right? And as Mark in the chat is saying, he said the Equinox is coming. Maybe people shouldn't be as upset about the Bolt leaving, but the Equinox isn't here just yet, and we don't know what it will officially cost either. So,
and Bolt's
for a car that waves the low-cost banner, the flag, you've got the Bolt was probably the best option because the Nissan Leaf is okay in certain circumstances, but I would definitely prefer a Bolt. And other than that, there aren't many other affordable options.
Right.
Exactly. And I think the sad part, for GM at this point is that they're getting rid of the only EV that is selling in volume. But there's a timetable with product schedules, and so you can't just get parts all of a sudden So this was scheduled to end. I think they thought that they'd be a little further along in the Ultium rollout at this point. So they were thinking it'd be no big deal. We'll have a $30,000 Equinox.
Mhm.
But lots of issues obviously arose. And, here we are. We're going to have a short drop in the Bolt. And I think that possibly that higher pricing than they announced previously on the Equinox EV, maybe leaving some extra room for Bolt to come up in price
Mm.
just a tad for the next generation, but still be an entry level product.
Yeah. Do you think they had a second generation Bolt in development when they announced the cancellation of the car, or were they like, oh crap, people actually cared about this, so we'd better say we have another one coming?
Yeah, well, when they announced the Bolt facelift at that backgrounder that we attended, they were pretty persistent that they had no plans to bring the Bolt back on Ultium.
Mm.
And that's what they were saying. They're like, no, we're this is, you're not going to see the Bolt on Ultium. This is pretty much the last run here. So I think this is a little bit of a reversal. And I think it's a smart one, to be frank. There's you know obviously some room at the lower end of the market on both the ICE side and the EV side. I think it's a great car. Honestly, I recommend it to a lot of people still, even
We
though
do
it's an
too.
older technology. It's it's a great car, and it just, if you can deal with the looks,
And the DC fast
and
charging.
Yeah, and the
well,
DC.
yeah, that's a big issue, and that was a limitation on the BEV3 or BEV2 platform that it's on, the older technology. So which is why they need to update some of that and reintroduce it.
I want to bring this comment up here really quick. It's too many bolts camping and DC chargers here in LA, and we talk a little bit about it on our videos too, and get a little bit of grief. We love the Bolt. We think it's great. Being one of the more affordable cars, it's purchased by folks who maybe don't live in a home with home charging. So there's folks going out there and using DC fast chargers as gas pumps, which isn't really the best way to. That's not the best EV ownership experience, having to
Mhm.
go there to do it. So when we're in a hurry, like we were on our Great Lakes tour, the trip that we were doing, like pulling in and seeing a Bolts at 85% stated charge going to 100
At the 350
at
charger.
a 350
Yeah.
charger, admittedly can be frustrating. But I also understand sort of why it's there. And I don't really want to fault somebody for doing that. I wish they'd pick one of the slower chargers if there's one available.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think there's certain economics that just lead that demographic of that buyer to use fast chargers as gas pumps, which isn't ideal. And then Mark also mentioned you can get a low end Model 3 at 40,000, and the new Highland model. I mean, that has a screen in the rear. It has some new battery tech. It's when it gets here, it's going to be a very well equipped, very compelling product at 40, 41, 42 grand. So, I again, a $40,000 Bolt loses out the door. $40,000 some Bolt kind of loses the plot if you can
Mhm.
get it for less than that.
A very interesting comment from James Daniel in the chat, if Carmen can pull that up. But he says, I have a Mustang Mach-E GT that wasn't much more than a new premium Bronco SUV. Have you guys not been looking at what premium ICE vehicles cost? And it's a very, very good
Yeah,
comment, because what's the
Right.
average transaction price these days? It was, I think, just about 50 grand. It may
yeah,
have
it's
come
almost
down a little
50.
bit, but still 50 grand roughly is what the number that I saw. Paul, you might have an updated figure
No,
for
that
that, but
it's
it's
somewhere around
expensive.
there. It's above 45 still, I
Yeah.
believe.
Well, and James mentioned earlier, and I will pull this comment back up, but James mentioned earlier that it's very easy to politicize EVs, and EVs are kind of the scapegoat here. Like, oh, well, we don't want $100,000 electric pickup truck, but a Raptor R is 110. Like,
Mhm.
it's there is cars are expensive. It's not EVs that are expensive.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
they are, and comparative to a gas car, they're still a little bit pricier. but everything's expensive. I tried pricing up a new Toyota Prius, and Toyota Financial Services wanted to charge me almost 10% interest, and that was with excellent credit. Like, no.
Yeah.
So,
It's
yes.
very, very true. I mean, all of the entire market is moving that. Jeep just announced that they're getting rid of Renegade in the US.
Mhm.
And vehicles like Trax and Maverick
Maverick.
and these are great new entry level models. There's just it's sad that so many automakers are moving away from that direction. They've gotten used to being able to sell these higher profit products at a higher price, and consumers at the low end have so much pent up demand. We just went through the pandemic, uh, supply chain shortage and chip shortage, and it was automakers were prioritizing all of the high most expensive trims and where they make the most money. And so and then that set the used car market into a tailspin, and everything went up. So these entry level buyers had nothing to buy, and finally we have some great options. Now they just need some EVs at a lower price point as well.
We need like a Model T for EVs. Like, just call it the Model U. It's a very basic, sturdy,
There you go.
Yeah.
versatile car for a very
Okay,
low
Paul.
price.
All right, Paul. Craig makes a good point. I mean, he often makes good points, but like the Chinese,
Hmm.
do you think they're going to get any headway in the coming? I mean, and what I mean by the Chinese is I don't mean Volvo or Polestar or the Chinese built Buicks. Like, I don't mean that. I mean like a BYD or somebody coming in and just saying, look, you guys don't want to build cheap EVs. We can let us sell them.
Right.
Or I mean, this is a little political, of course, but like, do you see that as a possibility? Or
Well, I definitely see it as a possibility. They've been trying to get into the US for as long as I can remember, and it just hasn't happened. Not to say that it won't or it can't, but Geely is really the only one who's been able to penetrate this market. They build cars here now. They're about to start building, two EVs here,
yeah,
which is significant. The other significant thing is we also saw, like I mentioned earlier, the first Vietnamese company selling here, and they just started 6 years ago,
right.
and so when you look at the money and the scale that China has behind them, and they still haven't been able to penetrate this market, uh, I think it's very political thing, and I think we're going to try and stave that off as long as we can. But
Maybe it'll be like full-size trucks in the Japanese automakers. They've just never, that's the one segment they've never been able to figure out, that one nut they haven't been able to crack. The full-size
right,
truck market in the US.
Yeah, but they
Not for
you
want
never
of
know.
trying.
Well,
the metric ton midsize are just, they crush it there.
yeah.
So I mean, that obviously I think that'll be a potential trend for 2024. Uh Really quick, I mean, we just talked about the Vietnamese. We didn't really talk about can the Vietnamese make good cars? So Paul, you went to Vietnam.
Yeah.
You saw VinFast's dog and pony show, but also their
To
productions.
say the least, from what
Right.
I've heard.
It was a little bit of a honeymoon. But
Yes.
cutting through all of that,
Mhm.
the first VinFast I drove, I thought was kind of meh for the
Yeah.
price. Like
Yeah.
they weren't terrible. I think that in some ways they're better than a couple of Teslas that I've driven, in certain very kind of specific areas. But uh, being late to the game, you kind of have to hit it out of the park, and I don't think that they did. But as you said, they're only 7 years old.
Yeah.
So what kind of insight do you have there? Where do you think, how are American consumers taking to it? Obviously, the first batch of bad reviews were bad. Um,
Yeah.
that
All
where's
999 got recalled.
yeah. Oh yes, that's right. That's
100%.
right.
No, I mean, clearly the car wasn't ready. I went there in July last year and drove pre-production models in Vietnam. And they brought, you know, a number of analysts and media there to basically get feedback. And, we told
Sure.
them this is not ready for the U.S. market. U.S. buyers are extremely picky compared to the rest of the world. Um, and the standards are a little bit higher here. Uh, we had hoped that they would have addressed some of those issues, and it's pretty clear that most of the issues were not addressed, judging by any media reviews that you've read. But it's their first one out of the gate in the U.S. market. Um, I think there's time to pivot and try and tweak some of the things that were wrong. I think most of it, I'd say the majority of it, could be tweaked with software. That's one of the benefits of the direction that the auto industry is moving. That so much can be handled via software. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I think it was a rush product. They moved very fast there. They wanted to enter this market very quickly. They were hoping to get an IPO way before they did. There was just a number of things. I think they were moving too fast. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but the 6 and the 7 were actually designed, engineered by Tata Motors
Huh.
out of
Okay.
India.
Yeah.
Obviously Tata's behind Jaguar, Land Rover. So you have the I-Pace that is already in play, and they're working on other models. So I don't know exactly how that's going to play into the market, but
So why would
that
they
might
have?
be
Is
it.
this a joint venture that they had Tata do the engineering work? Did they not have the expertise themselves? What's the story there?
I I think it's both of those. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
I just don't think they have the expertise to do it. I think that they also, you know, had many other issues that they wanted to take care of at the time. And why not go to somebody who has experience with it? As a young automaker, you can kind of lean into some people that have been there. You see it with like Fisker,
Hmm.
contract building with Magna. It's not an unheard of thing, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. And so I think, yeah, leaning on somebody who has a track record is a good thing for them. And I think, I mean, we'll see what actually happens, but I think it's probably going to be positive for 6 and 7.
Well, they used BMW parts for their gas cars too, as well. The BMW platform stuff back in
Right.
Vietnam. So,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
there was switchgear and stuff that you could see was taken from that, and yeah, a lot of it was. So
and yes, the Onyx 6 is lovely. Craig has got a review going up on Monday, but I've enjoyed each ones that I've driven, and it's just, I don't know, it's just lovely. But like, what else? What else is coming? Where, maybe not necessarily cars, but like,
Recession?
yeah, like
Let's hope not.
recession.
yeah, but we've been hearing that for so long, and
Yeah, I think the bankers want a recession.
yeah,
With the stories I keep seeing, it's like recession,
I think
recession, recession.
everybody wants a reset, and I think a lot of people are excited for 2023 to be over, and a new year to start. It's been a tough year for a lot of people, but yeah, I think overall, 2024, there's a ton of new models coming. So I think we're going to see a lot of things change next year. I think supply chains are going to be back in order. I think we're going to see, lots are going to start to be filled up again. And I think there's going to be another wave of new buyers coming in
Hmm.
on
um,
both the ICE side and the EV side.
Because what's the average vehicle age? Do we know?
I
Certainly,
don't have that data,
yeah,
but
I think
it's
it's
old.
13 or 14 years
yeah,
now.
Yeah, I was going
Yeah,
to say
more than
13, I
10,
believe.
certainly.
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I'm excited about the Celestic or Celestique, if you prefer. I wanna get behind the wheel of one of those.
Yeah.
It's a very
If they can build them.
long car.
Yes.
The
Well, it's
standard of the world.
supposedly.
And they,
Yeah.
so what are they saying? 1.25 cars a day they can build.
Uh-huh.
And
1
but
1/4
then
cars. I hope I don't
but
drive off
then
with the quarter car. Is that just one wheel or
then you got
Right.
to add the Altium quotient to it, so it'll probably be like 0.25 cars a day.
the Ultium? I like that.
The actually Mark drives an EV and his people think that he's rich. When we first had that Tesla Model 3 standard range lease, like I remember going to the convenience store to pick up some stuff, and guys like, "Oh, you've got the money." I'm like, "It's cheaper than most new cars sold." So I do think there is a bit of a perception still that, I mean, EVs are expensive, but I also feel like there is a little bit of a perception like, "Oh, you are
A person of means.
yeah, you are a person of means." ID7 also super nice looking, should be super efficient. I don't know, Paul, do people want sedans?
We're starting to
I
see
do.
somewhat of
I
a
do.
yeah, I know exactly. There's a lot of people that do. I think, I don't know, maybe it'll come back in style, but yeah, the American consumer has voiced its opinion pretty clearly, and it's SUVs. Um, but I'd like to see more sedans on the road myself.
Let's do a little bit of role playing before we kind of wrap this up. And not the type of stuff that needs an OnlyFans. But let's say you are Mary Barra. There are maybe some calls for you to retire. There's definitely been some questions raised around her salary with the recent UAW negotiations. She's running one of the largest automakers in the world. There have been some issues, obviously, with rolling out Ultium, but she's also in charge of a company that sells a lot of flipping pickup trucks, and that's what people want. So, like if you were her without the leather jacket, what would you do? What would your 2024 goals be if you could? I mean, obviously you're not inside there, so you don't know everything going
Stock
on.
buyback. Oh wait.
But yeah, what would you do?
I think the first thing I would probably do, as they've kind of moved to now, I'd temper the Altium rollout. I think this year they have Blazer, Equinox, Celestiq, 2 different Cadillacs, a 3-row, and then Optic, the small one. Buick's going to have an EV crossover that's supposed to be introduced. GMC Sierra EV. But there's not that many buyers out there right now, and all of a sudden it's going to be flooded with a bunch of different. Escalade IQ is coming too.
Right.
Those models have all been announced, and I think if they're going to start building them, that's fine. But I think there's been a lot of talk about looking at hybrids again. I think that maybe that decision should have been made a couple of years ago. I still think I'm a big hybrid proponent. I think, plug-in hybrids in particular, if they're used correctly, could fit the needs of so many different people.
Oh yeah.
It's a great transition to, even just, the changes in your lifestyle that you need to make for EV ownership. It's just an easy way to kind of get into that. I think, that was a kind of a big missed opportunity. You look at 2023 will be about 8 to 9% EV market share. That's still 92 to 91% is everything else. And hybrids are increasing. So I definitely think that they should be looking at that in some different products. And I think they've been doing a great job keeping the ICE lineup fresh. We've already saw the Tahoe and Suburban, which I don't know why they introduced them so early, because they're not going on sale till the end of next year.
But I think they get in the news cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but none of these are everybody in, Paul.
Yeah,
remember, it's
exactly.
everybody in EV. Yeah. Also, if you're Mary Barra, you just had Honda walk away from an affordable EV partnership. So
right.
that's
They were already going to develop their own next gen products, but I wonder if the Altium quotient or effect was was in play with that deal.
Yeah, and Honda is getting into the EV game this year too, or next year with, they got Prologue coming and Acura ZDX.
which
I
are
think they might
both
be a
Altium.
little, I think they might be a little nervous about how their rollout is going to be. I'm sure there's some contracts that, they need to prioritize some of those models, at least in the beginning, to make sure that they get out. But yeah, it's a huge year for GM. And I think the number one thing they need to figure out is how to fix Altium. And I know they're doing that now. And then you throw Cruise into the mix. You have all the issues at Cruise, but it's not just Cruise. There's, it's all of the software. They got a new guy, Abbott, Mike Abbott, who is running all of their software now. And my understanding is that there's some really big hiccups at the Ultra Cruise side too. That was supposed to launch with Celestic, and clearly that's not happening. I think they officially even announced that. But I'm hearing it might not be ready until 2025 or beyond. So there's a lot of issues going on at GM right now. They're like I said, the ICE lineup is keeping them afloat, and it's pretty strong right now. They got Trax in the mix, which is killing it. It's a great vehicle, probably the best entry level you can get. Invista's right up there too, and it's not that much more. And I think that the success they've had with that, they need to really, really hammer down on and try and find something else in the middle there. And they can't rely so much on the EV future right now.
I'm going to let you think about this for a second, Paul, while I do a little bit of promo, but come up with your most wild prediction of 2024 that you can think of. Like just the most wildest thing that could possibly happen while I talk just briefly about we're introducing channel memberships. We only have one tier level right now. It's 99 cents a month. It's $12 a year. Give us your money. What it gives you is our sincere love and adoration, the ability to do more fun stuff in the future because Google AdSense doesn't necessarily pay all the bills. And the before and after show where we act a little silly and do some silly stuff, like you can always watch that live, but if you miss a live show and want to catch it on the replay, we'll have that up on as a members only thing. So consider giving us your money. We'll add more stuff in the future, higher tier levels, but like I said, Craig, give us your money.
Yes, give us your money.
Give us all your money. All right, Paul.
Preferably, as much as you possibly can.
As much as you possibly can. Paul, wildest prediction for 2024.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Well, your kids are going to get older.
Oh, yes.
Hopefully not ill. Hopefully not sick, like because you're home with sick folks today. So thank you for obviously your time.
My door is locked. I've only heard one knock, so it's not too bad.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe Craig, do you have any possibly wild predictions that are also
asteroid hitting the planet, economic depression, World War III, or realistically, maybe the UAW will organize a foreign automaker's factory.
Paul.
Do
you see that? Do you see that happening, Paul?
Man,
it's a long shot.
It is a long shot. I think they came close with what was it, VW?
I think so. A few years ago.
Yeah, that one was close.
Toyota upping wages after the UAW contract, right?
Yeah, well, I think everybody did, right?
Yeah.
Didn't Honda do something too? And
probably.
Yeah, that was all very preemptive. Starship makes a perfect landing on the moon. I don't even know if SpaceX is going to get permission to launch Starship again. So that's because there have been some issues with destroying property in Texas. But Lockheed and GM and their partnership, there's 6 people going to the moon next year, six companies to establish a permanent presence on the literal moon. So
But we never
Woo.
went in the first place.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So
Stanley Kubrick shot it
and
in a
it's funny.
soundstage.
It's funny. Like you can actually the way that people can 100% prove that it wasn't faked was the shadows. Because because there's no way to like manipulate the shadows with the technology at the time to have them cast a certain way. So if you figure out where the sun and the moon and stuff was and where they landed on the moon, like it's impossible to have it's impossible for that photo to have been taken anywhere other than on the moon, which I think is a really geeky, nerdy way to figure out that stuff. So, what are you gonna do? But yeah, no, I think unionization. I think there's still an appetite for it. I think Sean Fain isn't done with his reign of terror or his reign of
He's fighting for working
whatever.
class people, which have been deprecated for decades here.
Yeah.
Probably 40 years we've seen a decline, or better, that we've seen the decline of organized labor in this country. And there are a lot of great reasons to organize if you are a worker, because how else can anyone check the power of giant corporations whose only reason for existing is really to build shareholder value? They don't care about you, the employee. They don't care about, building a quality product or offering a quality service necessarily. They want dividends and stock buybacks.
Will nobody will
That's my opinion.
nobody
Maybe I'm
think-
wrong, but
will nobody think of the shareholders? Mark is leaving us. But I was gonna address this one question here after our call.
Please come back again.
Yes, please come back again. But let's wrap up the official formal show here by saying, Paul, thank you, for joining us.
Of course, anytime.
Your insight is most excellent. And we talked a little bit about dysentery in our pre-show. So if you're wondering why, if you're wondering why we were talking about dysentery on our pre-show, we recently attempted to visit all 5 Great Lakes in a single day in an EV. And you should click on the screen over here to watch that and see if we succeeded.
Oh, that kind of dysentery. You weren't just disrespecting somebody named Terry.
No, I was not dissing Terry.
Gotcha.